no discharge in the war.
Doing this. You stop for nothing! Run! Send it.
Moving up and down again. Don't. Look at what's in front of you. If your eyes up, they will get the top of you. Hey, keep from going normative. Moving up and down again.
There are many kinds of death, and some are better than others.
You scared? Are you?
No.
Do you know the words memento mori?
It means remember death.
Mom?
Remember, you must die.
Jimmy, do not move!
28 years ago, it began.
Infection takes away their mind.
We adapted.
Our home is so precious.
They evolved. On June 20th, a new fear is born.
Put it down. Kill it.
There are many kinds of death. Some are better than others.
He's yours.
Moving up and down again. Bam. There's no discharge in the war. Moving up and down again. No discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 4, 17, 32 the day before.
Man, what is up? What is up? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome everybody to this very unconventional time of ours, but we thought, seeing as this is a big UK film, we would try and go live at a time that was a little bit more conducive to our pals over across the pond. Because that's been really fun about this film and about us covering this movie up until this part. There's been people from all over the world commenting and waiting for this film. This is definitely not a US-based movie. This is a worldwide movie, very much. So we figured we would do a little bit of an earlier stream today. I know it's definitely a lot different from what we usually do. And we will still do probably still do our regular time tomorrow night as well. But for this one, we figured we would go live a little bit early and see if we could catch some of our UK friends, because I am dying to hear their thoughts and their opinions on this film as well. Many of you have been leaving some of your thoughts and opinions on some of our recent posts and recent videos, which has been awesome. And I always love when the feedback is a bit mixed, when there is a good amount of people that love the film and a good amount of people that maybe don't like it. I like that. I don't mind that kind of split down the middle right there. I feel like that sometimes creates for the most intriguing kind of conversations. So it's been interesting to read people's comments. It's been pretty split down the middle, which is not a big surprise. It's a very interesting film. It takes some chances in some areas that I think paid off pretty well. But no, it's been good to see the feedback, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys in the chat have to say as well. But here we are, folks, the live review for 28 years later. That this will be a little bit spoilery, yes. This is not going to be a spoiler-free review. I do have the full film loaded up here. We're going to be taking a look at some of our favorite scenes and talking about them. So yes, if you haven't seen it already, I would suggest maybe checking this out later or coming and joining us for our stream tomorrow night after you do have a chance to see it, because we will be discussing some spoilers, definitely. So just a heads up there. This will not be a spoiler-free review. But welcome, PM. Good to see you, my friend. I know you and I had similar thoughts on the film. We both really enjoyed it. We saw some of the things that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland were trying to achieve here, and I love that. But what was your overall thoughts? And I mean, did it live up to the hype, I guess, is the big question. Let me know what you guys think in the chat as well, because this was a hugely hyped film. Like, the hype surrounding this film was so big going in large part thanks to the really good marketing for the film. I mean, the trailers were great. All of the marketing was brilliant. What do you guys think in the chat? Did it live up to the hype? And what do you think, PM? Did it live up to the hype?
I think it was worth 28 years of wait. It was worth it. It was amazing. I mean, it was so complex. There were so many layers to the film, and I think it delivered what we thought it was going to deliver. I always, kind of listened to what they were saying. I feel like maybe when I see that people didn't like it, I wonder if they were listening to what Alex Garland and Danny Boyle were saying. They told us this is about family. This is a
Yeah,
zombie film about family. And indeed,
right.
it was about family. They delivered on the promises that they made. So I was very satisfied. I was very happy with the film. I think it's a masterpiece, in my opinion. I really liked it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And coming into this film, I feel like there were a lot of people that were picking up some of the clues and stuff that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland were laying out. I mean, I think a good amount of us knew this was not just going to be a zombie film going into this film. None of them are. I mean, you look at 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, that they very much are geared in a very similar direction, where it's about the people, it's about the humans, and the human stories involved, surrounded by this world of the infected. It's not a zombie film per se. And I feel like this one was pretty, much just in line with how I kind of saw the first two as well, where you're seeing, what happens when society falls, and you see the very best and the worst of humanity get brought to the surface. And as you mentioned, it's a story about family as well. And one thing we talked about coming in is we found out it was very interesting that it seemed like Spike was going to be the main character of this trilogy. They talked a little bit about Spike being the one character that's going to carry every iteration from one to the other to the other. He's going to be a main focal point throughout the trilogy. And I think that very much is what we saw here. We very much, and we talked about this going in, that this first one was going to be Spike's kind of coming of age, his coming of age tale, the first act in his quote unquote hero's journey. And anybody who knows about the story structure laid out with the hero's journey, it follows very specific story points throughout. And this first act very much followed that out to a T. It very much was the first act of Spike's hero's journey. And that's kind of how I saw it. It was very much Spike's coming of age tale, seeing some of the things that he has to go through with his mother in particular. And I think everybody's going to see these kind of things in a different way based on your own personal experiences, I guess. And I think maybe why it hit a little closer to home for me, as you well know, is I have a similar relationship with my mother, where I'm currently taking care of her because with her illness. And it changes you. Something like that changes you when you go your whole life as a child being taken care of by your parent, and all of a sudden, at the drop of a hat, you have to turn into the caretaker for your parent. It changes you. It comes with a responsibility that I imagine you probably can't feel anything close to it until you're a parent yourself. So I think in that regard, I very much could see what they were doing with Spike's story, and sometimes the burden that is put on children who are put in this position, children who are forced to take care of their parents when that role is reversed a little bit. So that aspect I absolutely loved. Again, it could just be me based on my personal experiences, having a similar relationship with my mother, taking care of her right now as I currently am. But I love the aspect that Danny Boyle was trying to showcase, and that Alex Garland was trying to showcase about what kind of crazy and big responsibility it is when all of a sudden the child turns into the caretaker.
I thought that that was one of my favorite storylines, right? When we see a family in a film, in a trailer, we assume well, they're probably going to be the perfect family, right? And if they're going through suffering or pain or illness, they're probably going to be, the great dad and the great mom united in their grief of her, being sick, and their son, a whole family unit that is perfect. That's what we're used to seeing. If we're gonna get a family, they're usually very, depicted in a very loving way. And
Yeah.
what I liked about how they depicted Spike and his mother's relationship was that it was more realistic.
Yeah.
Spike was the only one that was able to care for his mother with a level of love and sympathy that we didn't see the dad having for the mother. And so I think that that made it more realistic, but also it made it more interesting than what we're
Mhm.
used to getting. We're used to getting perfect families, and they were certainly not a perfect family.
No, they weren't. And you're right. Sometimes films will depict this perfect, this kind of this nuclear option, this nuclear version of the perfect family. And more often than not, that just simply isn't the case. And you would definitely expect in a setting like this, in a world like this, where everything is kind of fallen to hell around you. Yeah, you would see some families that would have some struggles, that would be going through some things. And we look at the relationship between Jamie and his wife, for instance, as well. Very much not that caring, loving relationship that you would expect
Mhm.
a husband to have for his wife in this kind of state. It seems like Jamie is very much kind of ignoring it to a certain extent, and kind of almost like he doesn't want to face it, or almost like he wants it to hurry up and end already, like he can't quite deal with it. And yeah, I mean, again, I like how I know people were going into this maybe thinking it was going to be something else, and that's totally understandable. As Chewy brings up in the film in the chat, it's definitely not for everyone, and that's totally understandable. It is definitely not a film for everyone, and that's fine. If it's not a film for you,
Mhm.
it just wasn't a film for you. I think it had a good amount of thriller and horror and gore aspects that would usually kind of satisfy the average horror goer. But if some of the added elements were just a little too much, and that's totally understandable. It's totally fine. Everybody, likes what they like and doesn't like what they don't like. But it is definitely one of those films where, if you get what they were going for, I feel like you have a better appreciation for it. And that's kind of how I saw it when they were trying to depict some of these more real life aspects of being human. And I think that's where some of the kind of the confusion might come in, where, I mean, yeah, I get it. Some people are going in there, they wanted to see a zombie film. And I feel like you do get very much good aspects of that. There's tons of infected in this film. The alpha is absolutely fucking terrifying in the scenes that we do get for him. I was
Mhm.
very much glad that the alpha didn't get killed off in this first film. We'll probably likely see him in the second one as well. So I feel like we did get a good amount of gore and horror and that thrilling kind of feel, especially during the first half of the film. I feel like the first half of the film does start to play out like your quintessential horror film. It's the second half of the film, like halfway through the second act and into the third act, that's when it starts to focus on some of these more family and human aspects of the film. But I feel like the first half of the film was very horror oriented and horror geared towards. And especially where the score was concerned. And you and I had talked a lot about the score, and you pointed out some very interesting things about the score to this film. Because I know some people had some problems with the music at times. And I think if you're looking at this music in this film as a soundtrack to the film, that's not what it is. That is not what this music is here to represent. And you were very right in pointing this out, that the music that we see more often than not, especially during the action sequences, is more often reflecting the character's internal monologue that they're focusing on in any given scene. And I think that's why we see some of the kind of outside of the box music choices that we see here. And when you look at it from that perspective, I think you appreciate it a little bit more, thinking that this is not a soundtrack to the movie. This is a soundtrack to the character's inner monologue during this scene. And I think it just makes more sense when you think about it in that aspect.
It makes perfect sense to me, right? Um, and I think that it goes with people's disappointment, right? Are you critiquing the film because of what you wanted it to be, your desire for what you wanted it to be? Or are you watching it and critiquing it for what it is? Not what you wanted, but just what they're showing you, the story that they're telling you, what the story actually is. I think that a lot of people's disappointment is because they wanted it to be a certain way. So they went in with an expectation. And of course, the movie is not going to be exactly what you expected it to be. So from their expectation, they
Yeah.
couldn't actually focus on what the story was and if it was a good story or not. When it came to the issues that people were voicing, one of them was the soundtrack, that it didn't match what they were seeing on screen, or
Yes.
they felt that the scene on screen would be better served by a soundtrack that had more action or more fear in the style of it, right? And a lot of the
Mhm.
soundtrack was not a fearful one or an action-packed soundtrack. It was not. It
Yeah.
was calming at times. It
Yeah.
was hopeful, and so it wasn't matching what you saw on screen. But when you watch it, if you watch it again and you think about the character that is in the scene, the soundtrack matches what that character is seeing, not what
Yeah.
you are perceiving, but what the character sees. A great example is Spike and his father running away from the Alpha.
Yes.
So they're running away,
And I
and
love the use of bass in that scene, like the heavy use of bass mixed in with just that heart pounding boom, boom. The use of bass in the music was really good.
Mhm. It was right. But as they are running away and the alpha is getting closer and closer and closer, instead of the soundtrack or the song becoming one of action, one of like heart beating palpitations, where you are terrified because the alpha is about to potentially murder them, it becomes an inspiring soundtrack, almost a soundtrack that you would hear when somebody is running a marathon and they're about to cross the finishing line, right? They're about to
Mhm.
win this trophy. And so while it doesn't match what we're seeing, it matches what Jamie is feeling.
What they're
Because
feeling.
to Jamie, this isn't scary. To Jamie, the alpha chasing them, having his 12-year-old with him, being so close to death is not terrifying. He sees it as accomplishing this big thing, right? As winning a big award, because he just took his 12-year-old and defeated, this alpha if he does make it through. And right, like this coming of age, he like accomplished what he wanted at the end of the day, so it
Yeah.
makes sense that it was inspiring instead of terrifying. When you look at it that way, it matches what the characters are feeling, even if we can connect to the soundtrack. It's there for their story,
Yeah.
if it makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I think that's what they were at least going for anyway, with some of the different kind of music choices. When I started to look at it and that from that kind of perspective, it did start to fit a little bit more, I would say. Like you said, it's not a soundtrack for the audience. It's for the character's internal monologue, what they're feeling during the scene, I think. And yeah, Jamie was a scumbag, and everyone assumed Kelson was the bad guy, and it was pretty much a different kind of role reversal there, where Jamie did kind of turn out to be a bit of a dirtbag, and Kelson was exactly what I thought he was going to be, though, and we were talking a little bit about that in terms of Kelson was going to be filling the mentor role within Spike's hero's journey, and he very much did, to an absolute T. He's that kind of hermit, mentor, wise character that is giving our young hero the information and the tools that he needs to kind of continue on his journey. And in this instance, it's Dr. Kelson teaching Spike the acceptance of death, really, the acceptance of death
Mhm.
and the acceptance of some things you just can't stop. Death is inevitable, but it's not just because death is inevitable doesn't mean it's something to be feared. Don't forget that you must die, memento mori. And then even further with memento moris, remember that you must love. And I think those are some of the things that Spike really needed to learn, because he was holding on to this idea of being able to save his mother the entire film. And I think a lot of us in the audience kind of had the feeling like it was not, you just had the feeling it wasn't going to go that way. I just had this very dreadful feeling for Spike's mother at the very beginning of the film. I had a feeling she was going to die by the end. And I think a lot of that was reflected with Spike's just optimistic hope, the hope where all I have to do is get to this doctor and he's going to save my mom. And I think the story is very much setting him up for that realistic look at reality, where that is not always the case. sometimes there is just some things that just can't be done. Death is inevitable. It's not necessarily something that needs to be feared. It can be something that you can find acceptance in. And I think that was the whole point of Kelson's character, to let Spike realize this. But yeah, it was a bit of a reversal there where Jamie didn't end up being the kind of hero we all expected him to. He was a little bit more of a kind of nefarious character in some instances.
The horror counselors, he was awful. I hate him with the passion. Jamie was the worst. But critiquing his character, right? I like that we expected the dad to be this hero, right? When we
Yeah.
see the trailer, we see him taking Spike on this journey, and we expected, oh, he's probably doing this because he wants to protect his son. He wants to teach his son to fend for himself. He's probably a really good dad. That's how we imagined him to be. And I like that we were shocked. Not only is he not a good father, but he's not a very good person.
He wasn't a good husband, really, that's for sure.
He's not a good husband. He's not a good person. He's not a good father. Um, and you get to see how masculinity, right? Because he plays the big man, right? He tells the stories of having killed all of the infected. Everybody kind of in the community, when he's walking out with Spike, looks at him as, a leader, very much so, in the community, right?
Yes.
This tough guy, this
Yeah.
strong man,
Yeah.
right? And in reality, at the end of the film, you realize that not only is he not a strong man, but he is so weak that he can handle having a difficult conversation with his son about the mother dying, which is why Isla says, I needed someone to tell you. He couldn't even do that because he couldn't handle emotions. He could not handle his own emotions. He was not in control of them. He very much had his own type of rage. He could not
Mhm.
handle a difficult emotion, but who could? Spike
Spike.
could. Spike was able to handle all of these difficult emotions. He was able to have a difficult conversation. That scene was so heartbreaking to me when he tells his
When
dad,
Spike
"Get
sees
the
his
fuck away
father.
from us." Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was fucked. That was
And
fucked.
Spike is so upset, right? He has this innate feeling that he needs to protect his mother. He
Yeah.
wants to protect her. And so he pulls out one of the deepest betrayals that anybody could do to a family.
Yes. I mean, especially for Spike's POV, where Spike, I mean, these are both his parents, but this is his mother. I mean, and you see Spike doing everything in his power to try and keep his mother comfortable, to try and take care of her. So yeah, to see that, it's almost double the betrayal, because you're seeing your father do this when you know your mother needs her husband the most right now. Like, this is where he should be at her side the most, kind of thing. And yeah, it's something like that for a child as young as Spike to see. That's gonna leave a mark. That's gonna leave some trauma for him to deal with, that he'll probably go on to deal with over the next two other films, for sure. And I also see a lot of people asking about the baby, and the baby is a very interesting one as well. Do you think the baby will be immune, or as Haley brings up, does anyone feel like the baby might be a carrier and will doom the island? That, I think, is a much more likely scenario. I mean, I think it could be possible. Yes, the baby is just regular immune, but I wouldn't be surprised if the baby was a carrier as well, was already a carrier. I mean, we do see that the baby seemed to be born and looked pretty normal, pretty human. Dr. Kelson attributes the placenta with saving the baby from the infection. And while a placenta can protect newborns from contracting certain diseases, that is very much a real medical anomaly that can actually take place, because I wanted to look that up to see if that was based in anything in reality. And knowing Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, I had a feeling it would be, but I wanted to look it up just to be safe. And it does look like, yes, in some cases, the placenta can shield a child from contracting certain diseases and viruses. So I think that's what they were going for, at least. So I'm at least glad they tried to base it in some kind of reality. But yes, a lot of people were definitely expecting the baby to be infected. And I think it very well could be. Again, as Harley brings up here. Yeah, I think you might be onto it, Harley. I think that could be the issue. I wouldn't be surprised if the baby is a carrier, and that could go on to spell disaster for the community if they're not careful. Bringing that baby back to Holy Island might just end up being its undoing in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree, Harley Woods. And it matches what we saw in the trailer, where over the baby, like
A new
you
fear,
commented, that
a new
a
fear. Yeah,
threat is born.
yeah,
A new threat is born because it
yeah,
would very much be a threat. The fact that the baby is completely fine, but indeed it carries the virus. So
yeah.
what do you do? It's a threat to the community. But can you kick a baby out? Can you be so cruel as to discard of the baby? Um, that's what I'm most interested in because there's a line at the beginning of the film where Isla says that Jamie is a baby killer. And she says it over and over again until
Mhm. Right
Spike,
in this scene right here that we have on screen. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
He would kill you, Spike. He said, so maybe it is
Mhm. This
protocol
is
that they.
something. I mean, that's very interesting. Like, if it's like actual protocol that if they come across one of these quote unquote infected babies, that they have to put it out of its misery, that they have to kill it. And that
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting aspect that you bring up, that maybe Jamie's wife is remembering that maybe he had to do that at one point in time. Because you definitely get the sense from Jamie, from some of the things that he says, he spent a lot of time in the mainland. He knows a lot of what is going on out there. He knows that there's strange people out there. He knew about Dr. Kelson. He knows about alphas. He has that one line where he says, I saw one time it took over 12 shots to take down one of those things before. So he's had a lot of experience out there. So no, I think that's entirely plausible that maybe he saw an infected baby at one point and was forced to put it down, and she knows about it.
Mhm. That would make total sense because she was quite insistent on it, and it would match who Jamie is. We know that Jamie does not see the infected as human beings. He does not see them as people. He doesn't see them as worthy of being alive. He thinks that they're soulless, and he was willing to kill the little slow, low toddler. At the beginning of the film, you get the family of slow
Mhm.
lows.
Yeah.
He was willing to kill the tiny one. It was only because of Spike that he didn't.
Spike kind of
So
said dad, and then he kind of hesitated. Yeah. Mm.
he's willing to do it. He's willing to kill a child.
And that was interesting. The whole family of Slolos that we saw there, because that is one of the kind of themes that you see throughout the family, throughout the film. The theme of family, not just Spike, his mother, and Jamie, but we see that these infected are quote unquote having families. Whether it's the alpha trying to get his child back, trying to protect his child, or whether it's this family of Slolos. And I found it very interesting how even the slow lows seem to have a certain degree of almost intelligence to them.
Yeah, exactly, right? They recognize a threat and they communicate amongst themselves. You very much see the family structure and they recognize fear, right? So they're not completely gone. They still have these emotions of being afraid or being, of course, we know that they have rage inside of them, but
Mhm.
being hurt by an action of somebody else's. And yeah, like Stefano was saying, Jamie does not end up killing the slow low.
Yeah,
However, it's not because Jamie wouldn't have, it's because Spike stops
Spike.
him.
Yeah, definitely.
He stops him, he persuades him not to do it.
Yeah,
And then Jamie, instead of recognizing that Spike is not doing quite well, says, what a beautiful kill, and celebrates and calls it beautiful. Or do you feel, how do you feel, Spike? Do you feel great? And he says, no, I don't think I do.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell Spike he's going on this journey, and you can tell that there's that aspect of him that wants to make his father proud, but he does feel uncomfortable at the same time. I feel like he's not 100% comfortable in doing these things that he's doing, that his father is asking him to do. But he's doing them anyway because it's his father. I mean, at this point in time, he still very much looks up and reveres his father. He didn't really see the other aspects of him at this point in the film. So, even though you can tell that this is very much going against how Spike kind of feels internally, he's trying to do it to please his dad. And I think that just speaks to the natural just feeling that children have. I mean, children want their parents to be proud of them at the end of the day. At least most children do. I think that's what we see there, even though Spike knows that he's not really feeling it inside. He's, it's, but hey, this is a different world that they're living in, and I get Jamie trying to prepare him for life outside of the community. But yeah, Spike is kind of just going through the motions and hoping to please his father, but inside, yeah, it seems like he's not really feeling it for sure. The creepiest scene in the entire film was when Spike and Jamie are hiding in the attic. They are the alpha still standing next to them. Yeah, that was fucking nuts, wasn't it? And that's a really good scene that showcases just how smart these fucking alphas really are. Yeah, we get that scene. They're hiding up in the attic, and the alpha just standing there, just waiting for them, to leave that house. And it shows an incredible heightened level of intelligence, an incredible level of patience too. I mean, these rage virus victims, that was one thing that is kind of a hallmark of them, is they're always raging out. They're always just in super rage mode. But these alphas seem to have a little bit more control over their rage. We know that in some of these alphas, the rage virus acts like a sort of steroid, which is how they're, managed to be as formidable as they are. But they also have a much heightened level of intelligence too. It's not just strength and speed that they have, it's intelligence as well. And yeah, I mean, how eerie is this shot? This is one of my favorite shots in the entire film. The very famous kind of tree scene, the tree of life surrounded by death kind of imagery you get with the tree there and the infected surrounding it. Very much that kind of symbolism of the tree of life, surrounded by death, which is good. But no, I love the shot. This is a really great shot. One thing I will say about the film is cinematically, it's very breathtaking. When you see some of these shots, it's very much a cinematic experience. This is one of those films you do want to see in theaters, if you can, because you get some of the most beautiful, just sweeping wide landscape shots that I've seen in almost any film, really. Like, there's some really good shots in this film, and you totally get now why Danny Boyle wanted to film in a 2:6:7 format that is a little bit more of a widescreen format, because it showcases just these vast landscapes. And he talked a little bit earlier about wanting that feeling to create a sense of isolation when you throw a character in the foreground of that, and you just have this very small character in this wide open expanse. He wants to create that feeling of isolation, and I think he achieved that with a lot of these big kind of zoomed out wide landscape shots that do have characters in the foreground, like this here with the alpha. But no, this was definitely one of the more chilling parts, where you could just see the alpha just sitting there fucking waiting for them to leave that house.
Yeah, and it shows you that the alpha is intelligent enough to know that he is more important than the others, for he is their protector and their leader. He sends the others right into the house, but he doesn't yet know of the threat level that these two people possess. He doesn't quite know, right? So he's standing there and he's not going in. He's not going to risk that. And I do
Mhm.
see that the chat is talking about when he's running after them in the causeway. And at
Yep.
that point, I'm guessing that while observing them, he realized it's just a dad and his son. And he observed the type of weapons they had, and he deemed it, enough of a threat that he could probably take them on. So that's the
Mhm.
reason why he ran after them, because he kind
I
of
think he
made
was
an
waiting for
assumption
that
that he
moment.
probably could do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. For them to get out of there.
Mhm.
So there's strategy. There's
There's
strategy.
strategy. There is. There's strategy
Hmm.
involved, and I think that's exactly what the alpha was waiting for. Absolutely, the alpha was waiting for them to leave that house, start heading back down towards that causeway during a time when it's not full low tide yet. So the alpha knows they're not going to be able to move super fast, I would imagine. So no, that's why it seemed like that's what was the case, where the alpha was just waiting for them to leave and start heading down that causeway again, so it could pursue them. Maybe the alpha believed that it had the best chance of catching them here in this isolated moment. And it did. It almost did. It came super close to almost getting them. And there's even that one moment on the causeway scene where even Jamie thinks it's over. Jamie thinks it's over. He thinks they're dead. You hear there's one very specific line when they're running down the causeway where Jamie kind of looks back at Spike and he says, "Okay, Spike, that's it. This is it." Jamie thought that was it. Jamie thought that was the end. that fucking arrow came not a second too soon, or that alpha definitely would have got them and fucking ripped them to shreds, I would imagine, because that alpha was huge. But yeah, you get that one little moment there where even Jamie has resigned himself to where he's trying to prepare his son for the end. This is it, Spike. Watch out. This is it, Spike. He thought it was over in that moment, but he got really lucky. Really lucky that whoever was on the giant crossbow had some fucking good aim, some really good aim.
Mhm.
But that was almost it. That was almost the end for them. It was almost the end for them. Um, let's see. Yeah, I see a lot of people mentioning this too, and I haven't had a chance to look at the Crossed comics yet. But there's been so many people that have been leaving comments just like this in almost all of our 28 years later videos, where a lot of people are seeing tons of similarities between a comic book named Crossed and how it might have been influenced by it. I haven't read Crossed myself. It's on my wish list. I am going to check it out and read it because I am interested to see the similarities. But I hear a lot of people saying this, that it might be very heavily influenced by these Crossed comics. So I'm going to have to check these out. I'm gonna have to, yeah. Apparently, there were alphas in the Cross comics as well, and I heard someone saying something about a doctor being in the Cross comics as well. A doctor that kind of helps the alphas evolve, that helps the alphas become alphas. So that's a pretty interesting storyline. But no, I'm going to check them out. I'm going to check out these Crossed comics because I've seen so many people mention that now that they're seeing tons of similarities between this and Crossed. Um, let's see. And this is one thing I was wondering too. Has Boyle confirmed that it's Jimmy Savile inspired, or is it just time relative tracksuits and lookalike Teletubbies? And I guess that's an interesting question that someone, I imagine, will probably ask Danny Boyle at some point. And I did see a lot of people wondering, like, if that is the case, why would Danny Boyle have someone as despicable as Jimmy Savile play some kind of influence in the film? And I think you and I were just thinking the kind of simple answer to that is where their pop culture ended. At the end of the day, everybody that is stuck inside this quarantine, pop culture for them as they know it ended in the 90s. Over, done. So nobody inside the quarantine would have any idea that Jimmy Savile was what Jimmy Savile was later uncovered to be. They just wouldn't have context for it. So at this point in time, based on where their pop culture ended, Jimmy Savile was very much regarded as a beloved figure in the UK. The truth about him wouldn't be known to the people inside the quarantine. So if Jimmy Savile is a influence to the look of Jack O'Connell's character, that's most likely why, because pop culture for them ended a long time ago. They've been kind of stuck in a time capsule where the most popular things back then were Teletubbies, Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, Jimmy Savile, stuff like this. So I'm thinking if he is an influence for that look, because as you mentioned, it could just be as simple as tracksuits were super fucking popular back then too. It could just be a coincidence, but I definitely get why people are bringing up the Jimmy Savile angle, because it does look very similar with the hair and the tracksuit and all that. But I think if that is an influence, that's probably most likely why, because the people inside the quarantine would have no reference for what Jimmy Savile really was, because for them, pop culture ended in the 90s.
Yeah, and this is my thought on that, right? I feel like they might not confirm that until the Bone Temple movie is out, right?
Someone's going to
Because
ask
they
Danny
might
Boyle
be,
at some point. It'll be interesting to see what he says. Yeah.
yeah, because if it is inspired by him, then it's going to be a big part of what this Jimmy character will go on to do or
Yeah.
to be like, right? So we might have to wait on confirmation. However, I agree with you, Jeremy. The children, they wouldn't have known
They
because
wouldn't have
people
known.
only
Yeah.
found out
Yeah.
about what this person did after he died, right? It was accepted. Sure,
Yeah.
there was rumors. However, it was widely accepted and they removed all of these awards that they had already given him,
Yeah.
that he was a monster. And I do see that people in the chat are saying they're hoping that it's not inspired by him because
Mhm.
they want to keep the monsters to the fictional monsters in the film and not to the real
Yeah.
monsters of our world. But I think that
Mhm.
that actually might be the point. The point might be that Jimmy, when he shows up with Spike, he offers help, right? He says, let's be pals. Hey, even for a strong lad like you, this might be a little bit much. Do you mind if we help you? So he's showing up with the Teletubby soundtrack in the background and
The
these
rock
like
fucking Teletubby soundtrack, fucking rock and roll
which I
Teletubby
love.
soundtrack was hilarious.
Ridiculous outfit, right? And he's presenting himself as a helping person. So Jimmy Seville, he was given a lot of awards because he presented himself as a person who helped charity, who helped children, who
Yeah.
raised a lot of money for them. The truth about him was so much darker. He was
Hmm.
the true evil in this world. When you talk about true evil, that was him. So
Yeah.
I think that it wouldn't be an accident that they reference someone like this. And Danny Boyle and Alex Garland don't shy away from difficult themes. In the first movie, they have the whole storyline of the soldiers um, basically planning the abuse of this very young girl and this woman because he promised them woman. So they don't shy away from difficult topics. I think it's an insight as to who Jimmy is. He's gonna be dark, but darker than we're used to. We're used to monsters, but
Hmm.
that level of monster is one that even in real life we don't want to know anything about. We can't handle it, right?
Hmm.
He did mention, the actor mentioned that this is the darkest character
One of the
he's ever
darkest
played.
roles. Mm, yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, and that was my only take. My only problem with this was I wish we would have got a little bit more. I wish we would have got a little bit more of Jack O'Connell. I get that they're very much clearly setting him up for the Bone Temple, and I imagine he's going to be a huge part of the Bone Temple. And I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of character is this really going to be? What kind of villain are we really looking at? Who presents himself as someone who is just here to help in the beginning? So in those instances, like you said, it is kind of maybe that is why it's modeled off of that character, that figure who did turn out to be a monster in life, but presented himself like someone who was helping and a friend to children, but was really harming them. But no, I mean, again, a lot of people bring up the Power Ranger infusion as well, and you definitely get heavy aspects of that as well. Power Rangers were huge at that time period. I loved Power Rangers as a kid. Again, Jack O'Connell's character would be very much close to how old I would be. So because I very much grew up with the Power Rangers and all of that, I'm very much a late '80s, early '90s kid myself. And the Power Rangers were huge back then. And even in the beginning of the film, you see Spike kind of have his own little action figure that he's about to take with him, but he stops and leaves at home, almost like. And you know what that reminded me of for all of our Severance fans? It reminded me of that scene of Milchick. It is time to put away childish things. With Spike wanting to
Hmm.
take his action figure with him at first, but then stopping and putting it back. You need to put aside childish things. It just had that same feel. So anyone who's seen
Yeah.
Severance, you'll
And
know what I mean
grow.
by put aside childish things. And Milchick's scene, it just reminded me of that.
Yeah, you must grow, right? You
You
must
must
grow,
grow. You
which
must grow.
in fact he had to do. I see the chat referencing the cross. That's a great way
Yes.
of presenting what he had to do. He had to
Yes.
grow up really quickly.
Yeah.
Everybody abandoned him. He felt abandoned by his father, forsaken
Forsaken by
by
his father.
everybody in the world. So he had to grow up really quick. Yet he was a child, a Teletubby loving child
Teletubby
that
Power Rangers loving kid, Yeah.
exactly that found comfort in the Teletubbies in television when these horrible things were happening outside
Yeah.
the door. You see the children crying, and they're crying because they're hearing all of the madness going on, but yet they're facing the TV. So while they're hearing people dying, the madness, the screaming, they're also focused and fixated on the Teletubbies and they're dancing, creating that association.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I mean, he's like this perfect kind of melting pot of everything that was popular in the '90s at that time when pop culture fell for them, where it didn't advance beyond that. And yeah, you definitely get the Power Ranger infusion with the bright colors, the flips. Everybody was mentioning the flips that they were all doing off the cliffs and stuff. Yeah, it was straight out of Power Rangers. I mean, that was just such a big thing back then. But yeah, I loved the Severance callback at the beginning of the film when Spike is kind of putting away childish things. I thought that was really, really good. Very much reminded me of Milkshake. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see where this whole Jimmy gang, this Jimmy cult goes in this next film. Because if this character is supposed to be like the blackest of villains, which we're at least led to believe that this is going to be a big villain character in the trilogy, not a good guy. It's going to be interesting to see how Spike falls in with them. And I imagine that's going to be a good part of the second film, is Spike overcoming the Jimmy gang. That is going to be Spike's ultimately next test. And that's usually what happens on these heroes' journey. And again, these three films are very much the hero's journey of Spike. This is Spike's trilogy at the end of the day. It is his story that they are centering all of this around. So if this first act is the beginning of Spike's hero's journey, the next act is him going to be overcoming a great obstacle. And that could be this Jimmy gang that he is ultimately going to have to overcome in the second film. But no, I thought it was an interesting introduction to his character. I think they have definitely, done some outside of the box things with Jack O'Connell's character, but I think when you look at it in the context of when pop culture just completely stopped for them, it makes a little bit more sense that you would see him talking like this, dressed like this, and all of his compatriots, all of the track suits, the jewelry, all of it. And then of course, the cross. We see the cross, which many people have noticed as well. And I think there's a very specific reason why we see him still wearing the cross, but he's wearing it upside down now. He's not wearing it the right side up. And that goes back to what you said. At the beginning of the film, we see young Jimmy and his entire family gets slaughtered in front of him. His whole family, all of his siblings, cousins, all of those kids, his mother, his aunt, everyone gets slaughtered right in front of him. So what does he do? He runs and he leaves and he goes to the one place he thinks he'll be safe, his father, the Reverend. But when he gets to him, he is instantly rebuked by his father. And he's not kind of met with open arm embrace. He's not met with that protection that he thinks he's going to receive when he goes to his father. He's met with this cold kind of distance and this idea of his father saying, no, they're not dead. They're saved. And he's clearly looking at this whole event as Judgment Day. And we even see some of the quotes that are written on the side of the building later on in the film that are direct quotes from the book of Revelations. The second coming of Jesus, he will come with the clouds, with Jimmy's name right next to it. So I thought it was very interesting how at the beginning of the film, we see him go to the one place he thinks that he's going to be safe, only to get utterly the exact opposite of that embrace. And yet his father still takes the time to give him this cross and says, carry this with you on you, always have faith, never lose faith. And Jimmy proceeds to hide. His father dies. And as his father is raging out and getting infected, we hear Jimmy say, Father, why have you forsaken me? So in this moment, he feels forsaken. He feels betrayed by his father. He goes to the one person that he thinks is going to protect him, and he gets the exact opposite of that. Yet for some reason, all of these years later, 28 years later, he still has the cross. He didn't take the cross and throw it away because he felt betrayed, because he felt betrayed, he felt forsaken. He still carried the cross with him all of these years. Yet he wears it upside down to remind him of that forsaken feeling he felt at the beginning of the film, that he felt as a child. I think he wants to honor his father, and on one hand, but he never wants to forget that forsaken feeling that he felt when he went to the one person he thought would protect him. So I think that's why he kept the cross, and I think that's ultimately why he wears it upside down, to remember that forsaken feeling. He doesn't want to forget that feeling ever. And that's going to add to some interesting complexities to this character when you see how twisted he is and how traumatized he is. This is ultimately a character that is incredibly traumatized. You see what he went through as a child. That is going to mold you in this post-apocalyptic world. On top of it, that has all the makings of molding you into a very dark character. And I think we're going to see that, yes, he might be a dark character. Yes, he might be a villain, but I think we're going to see some complexities to him there, and that there's also a great deal of trauma that he's dealing with from that childhood.
It makes perfect sense. I think that that line, Father, why have you forsaken me,
Yeah,
perfectly summarizes who Jimmy is. Jimmy is a child that was forsaken by his actual father, but also by God, by Christ. If
yeah,
his father was the priest, then you assume that they were a very religious family, that they hung all of their hope um to God, right? His father himself, he's a priest. That's a big deal. So God is close to them in many ways, shapes, and forms. They are the leader of the congregation. So to me, I think it has this double meaning of his actual father forsaking him, saying
yeah,
this is judgment day,
yeah.
but also God himself. Because you would
Forsaken by
imagine a
God himself.
religious,
Yeah,
by God Himself. You would imagine a religious person, a religious child, the first thing he would do, seeing his family being slaughtered, would be pray to God for help. And yet, his own father forsakes him, and so does God. And that is a biblical line, Father, why have you forsaken me? And so
mhm,
he wears the cross upside down because, like, I agree with you, it is his father's. He wants to keep it with him, but
yeah,
also it's upside down with the double meaning. When
yeah,
you rebel against God
yeah.
himself, you turn against God, right? You turn into um, the
Yes.
opposite of what
You
God is.
lose
And
your
what
faith.
is that?
Yes.
Exactly. You turn the cross upside down. You do the opposite of that because you no longer believe. So
Yeah,
I think that that has a lot to do with who he is as a person. You see him
definitely.
hanging the infected upside down too. And the Jimmy person who had
Exactly.
Jimmy
Even
Carr
the
was also hanging upside down. So
very good point.
he has this obsession with doing this to people.
Yeah, it may be. Maybe. Yeah, and it might not be his blood father. It could just be father, as in preacher. That very well could be the case. It might not be his birth dad. It might just be father, and maybe that's why he's saying father. Why have you forsaken me? Not just the father in front of him, not just this priest character that he felt he was going to find safety in, but as you mentioned, PM as well. His overall faith in religion in itself, his overall faith in God is now shaken. It's been completely turned upside down. So why would he not wear the cross upside down going forward? And I like how you mentioned how the body, literally the body at the beginning of the film, is found hanging upside down with Jimmy carved in its chest, which is a direct kind of correlation to what we're seeing here with the cross. So that very much makes sense. So yeah, I mean, he feels betrayed. He feels forsaken. He feels left behind by the father, by God himself, by his family, watching his whole family get slaughtered in front of him. It very much is a representation of that. So when you take all that in consideration, yeah, you can see why this character is going to be severely damaged, why he might be presenting the thin veneer of kindness on the outside, this flamboyant, friendly, welcoming kind of personality that he is showing to Spike here in this moment. But I think the real Jimmy deep down is going to be the exact opposite of that. It's going to be a darker character, a more twisted character, a character that's dealing with this demon inside of him of losing that faith, yet still carrying this with him the whole time to remind him of that faith he lost. So I think we're going to see a very complex character with Jack O'Connell in the second film. I don't think he's going to be your average run of the mill villain. I think this character is going to be much more complex, much more complex.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that just explains his character a little bit more in terms of, because a lot of people, that was one comment that I saw a lot of people saying, "What was up with that ending? What was up with that ending? What was up with that ending?" And I think when you have to kind of look at it in a more nuanced way, where you have to look at the context under which a character like this would have been molded, under which a character like this would have been created. You have to take into the pop culture references as well, because again, everything for this character ended in the 90s. So all he's going to remember are 90s style pop culture references, whether it's the tracksuits, the jewelry, the Power Rangers, all of it. It starts to fit a little bit better when you look at it, I guess, in that context. Maybe seeing this scene just on the surface and seeing all these dudes with tracksuits and freaking, Targaryen mullets doing flips off cliffs might be a little jarring when you first see it. But when you look at it with the proper context, I think it will start to make a little more sense. At least will give you an insight as to what maybe Danny and Alex were going for. in this scene, if nothing else. Whether you felt they achieved it or not, totally up to you. But I think that's at least we can understand what they were going for in this scene.
Oh yeah, for sure. It matches perfectly. I mean, scientifically, when you look at it, what we know about Alex Garland and Danny Boyle is that they do the research. They research things
Yes.
so deeply that they make sure that the items that they're using are time accurate. So they pay attention to every little detail. And scientifically, if a child goes through trauma, a severe, severe form of trauma, and they don't
Yeah.
process that trauma, they get stuck in what they call time loops,
Yep.
and they create an association with whatever they were watching at the time, or whatever the weather was like, or whatever song was playing at the time of their severe trauma, and they get stuck in what they call time loops, where the person may grow and become an adult, but mentally they're stuck in this room where the Teletubbies are playing 24/7. That's where he's stuck mentally. And
Hmm.
so some people, while they reject it and they become afraid of that thing, other people create an
Embrace it.
association and a bond
Yep.
where
They
they
embrace it.
exactly they
Yep.
go fully on into that
Yeah.
to gain power, to feel like they have control of their
Yeah.
trauma. They become
Yeah.
that thing. And so it makes perfect sense that he would have the Teletubby soundtrack, but it's
The
not the
rock and
regular
roll
Teletubby,
Teletubby soundtrack too to make it even better. Add some rock to it.
a grown-up version Teletubby soundtrack, if you will. The Teletubby soundtrack of an adult, where you are mixing, I am an adult, but I'm stuck in Teletubby land.
Stuck in
And
Teletubby
so,
world.
well,
Yeah.
which is exactly what it is, unprocessed
Yep.
trauma. Mentally, he is stuck in that room with the Teletubbies playing 24/7 while he has become an adult, and he's trying to gain control and power over this world because he has nobody to assist or help him. He feels forsaken. He
Yeah.
only has himself, which
Yeah.
is why you also see the tagline. The tagline is biblical. He's coming
Time
with the
didn't heal
clouds.
anything. Yes.
Yeah, and he is
Yes.
coming with the clouds. It shows biblical. However, he tags his name, Jimmy, or
Yeah.
one of his gang people tagged the name Jimmy, saying, while there is biblical, things that he knows about because of
Yeah.
his upbringing, he's
Mhm.
rejecting it. And he's
Yes.
dispensing judgment, not God.
Exactly. He is judge, jury, and executioner now. And yes, I mean, you totally see characters. Some characters are afraid of these kind of things that happen to them when they're children. Other characters embrace them and they create an entire persona around that thing that they fear, as you mentioned, as a way of controlling that fear, of a way of controlling their fear. It gives them some degree of control over the thing they fear the most. And I 100% agree with you there. I think that's exactly why we see Jimmy looking like this, talking like this, acting like this. It is all a way of him to deal with that internalized trauma that happened to him when he was a child. This is his way that he can control that trauma without it controlling him. And I think when you look at it at that context, it makes a little more sense as to why he looks like this, why he acts like this. Um, and yeah, as this 100% very much like Victor from Victor is a very similar case, different in some ways, but similar at least in terms of the fundamentals of what trauma does to a young child and seeing them grow up with that trauma to finding ways to deal with it. With Victor, he deals with it through drawings, through drawing down his memories, writing down these things that he can differentiate as real memories and just things that he fears or dreams. So for Victor, yes, it is a very similar thing where that childhood trauma has molded Victor into what Victor is now on from, very much how Jimmy has been molded by his childhood trauma. Very similar characters, at least very similar character types in terms of Jimmy and Victor, for sure. Very, very much. So there was one thing I did want to talk about because there was one thing I didn't really enjoy too much about the film. Chewie brings up, how about those bullet time shots? Too much, or did you like it? I didn't like it myself too much personally. It just, I get what they were going for, but it came off a little bit jarring at times. This is another thing I'll bring up for Severance. Severance season 2 did something very similar, a very similar kind of filming method where they use a 360-degree gyro camera and they put it all the way around the actor to get these kind of very fast sweeping kind of 360 or 180-degree shots that switch from one side to the other. But in Severance, it works so well because it's happening within a very confined space like these hallways or the elevator. And I think that's why it worked just so well in Severance. It's more conducive to that kind of tight space fitting kind of areas where you're trying to navigate through something and you don't have a lot of room to navigate through it. Those kind of sweeping shots where you get that quick 180-degree angle, they worked very well in Severance, especially at the very beginning of Severance season 2 when Mark is just getting out of the hotel, just getting out of the elevator, and he's running through the hallways trying to find Gemma. It works so perfectly in that kind of setting. In this setting, out in the vast landscape and out in the world, it was a little more jarring, just for me personally. And we're talking about the scenes when, especially at the beginning of the film, it's a lot more prevalent when you see Jamie or Spike shoot at one of the infected, and as soon as the arrow pierces the infected, you get this quick kind of 180-degree kind of gyrating shot that I get what they're going for, but for me, it did come off a little too jarring at times. I don't know if it was the speed of which they were rotating or if it was the angle in which they were rotating. In Severance, I think it worked a little bit better because it was these kind of low up shots of it that you were getting where the camera was very low to the ground looking up at the character. And here the camera is more kind of eye level with the character. And I think it's just the angle of it just doesn't come off as smooth or as fluid as it would have if they would have established a low up shot like Severance did. So I get what they were going for and I applaud them for trying, but for me, no, it did not land. It did not work very well for me. I felt like these shots felt very jarring. They felt very just was not a fan of it.
I mean, that's a beautiful way of analyzing it. I think for other viewers like me and some people in the chat, but when you explain it of an open space, that makes sense.
Yeah. I just think shots like this are better for close quarter kind of shots. Again, you have that very tight, small hallway in Severance. So these quick kind of gyrating 180-degree angle shots, they work very well. And I think Severance slowed it down a little bit too. I think they tried to do it a little too fast here in 20. I think that's the biggest problem. It's too fast and it comes off a little bit jarring. And the angle of it is just not a good angle. It's kind of a straight on 90-degree angle almost, as opposed to the very kind of low established shots when you're looking up at the character. Things just move more fluid and seem to kind of come off a lot more smooth when you have that lower established shot looking up as opposed to that eye level shot just looking right at something. But that's just my personal opinion. That was one thing that kind of threw me off with a lot of these kind of arrow shots. But I get what they were going for, at least. I do get what they were going for. But yeah, I mean, and that's one thing I would almost love to do is kind of take these shots and kind of edit them a little bit in my own time, slow them down a little bit and see if I can change the angle just ever so slightly and see if they come off a little smoother. And I think they would. I think they would come off a little bit smoother if they were just a little bit slower and just a little bit more of a downward angle or an upward angle, you know, establishing the shot from the ground as opposed to eye level. But I get it. I get what they were going for. John Wick does
we like
this.
That. We want you to do that, Jeremy, and put it in one of your epic intros and show us.
I will. I'll throw it in. John Wick is another film that does this actually really, really well. The first John Wick film. When you look at the club scene in particular, when John Wick is running through the club and it's this kind of close quarter kind of gunjitsu kind of style that he has of fighting, where it's a martial arts style of shooting. And it just works very well for John Wick's style. And I think Keanu just looks fucking badass doing it because it's fucking Keanu. But John Wick does this really, really well, maybe even better than Severance did it, where you get these quick kind of really super fast 180-degree kind of angle switches, but they're always from a very low angle, and they always kind of you can always kind of see John Wick kind of as it's happening. It's in the middle while he's in the middle of a fluid motion. And it's not just a stationary shot that it's looking at. And I think that's another problem here. When you're doing these quick little 180-degree angles, you're looking at a stationary shot, a shot that's just of a zombie sitting there getting hit with an arrow. But when you're shooting something that is in the middle of a fluid movement, I think it just comes off better. I think that's why it works better in Severance, and I think that's why it works better in John Wick, and why it just doesn't work too well here. But that's just me. That is just me. Just a small nitpick that I found in some of the action sequences. I just came off a little jarring, and it kind of takes me out of the scene in some cases. But overall, the prosthetics were good. I think this film will definitely win some awards in terms of prosthetics. We've seen a lot of people talking about all the different prosthetics that are in this film. Samson in particular, a lot of people noticed Samson, good old Samson. But no, I think overall, the alpha didn't disappoint. I think that was one thing that I was very much looking forward to seeing what the alpha scenes were going to look like in the film. And I don't think the alpha scenes disappointed at all. I very much enjoyed seeing Chai on screen. I feel like he was super powerful, super imposing, super fucking scary. That train scene was legit scary. I imagine it would have been even scarier if we didn't see previews of it. And I'm kind of kicking myself in the behind in hindsight that I kept looking at all the new TV spot trailers. Like for the second film, I'm probably not going to do that. I'll probably look at the main trailers they release. And then when they start putting out the smaller TV spot trailers, I think I'm not going to watch those, because I feel like if we could have seen this train sequence scene fresh, if we didn't know any of this was coming, I think it would have been that much crazier and it would have been that much more intense. But kind of going into the film, kind of already sussing out what was going to happen in that scene, and it turns out we were right. That's literally exactly what happens in the scene, exactly what we thought was going to happen. It's the exact same thing. It just, I don't know, not that it took away from it. It was still very scary. The alpha was still very kind of imposing and scary, but I feel like the scene would have come across a little bit more intense, just for me personally, if I didn't know it was coming.
I understand that, right? But this is what you do, Jeremy. So while you would have wanted to be surprised, this is why we love the Jeremy Eisenfire channel. Because if we're listening or watching one of your videos, more than likely it's correct. More than likely your analysis of the trailer is actually what's going to happen. And you were proven correct in so many different videos of yours. So while you would have wanted to be surprised, we were happy that watching your videos, we were getting insight as to what was actually going to happen. So I enjoyed it. And talking about the prosthetics, I do see when the movie came out, there was a lot of people that were upset, believe it or not, chat. They were upset they couldn't get over Samson and his body, and it offended them. So I will say this. I'm very happy to see that the rage, we have Victor completely like that. So we have people, at least in our chat, who that was a positive for. So I'm all for it. If that's going to make you like the movie that much more, then go for it. Go for it. He's a hottie, okay. You guys, in pop culture we see some pretty hardcore stuff, you know?
We do.
So it's not that big of a deal, but I'm glad to see that the chat, who is always right, is on the right side of history. They thought it was a plus.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't show any of those scenes here. That's a quick way to get a channel nuked off Oblivion, so I cannot show any of those scenes. But yeah, I just feel like it was just adding another layer of realism to the film. I mean, these are infected. Some of these infected have been out there in the wild for 10, 20, 28 years, maybe even some of them, decades of just out there in the wild living like animals. So yeah, of course they're not going to have clothes on at that point. Their clothes are going to be all gone and more. You're going to see people with like very small little tatters of clothes left, which we saw in some cases, or you're going to see characters with just straight up no clothes. I mean, that is just realistic. That is a realistic look at what would actually happen in this circumstance. So I get it. I mean, Danny Boyle, he's very much is into realism. He likes his films to be grounded in reality, even if it is a horror film like this that is centered around a virus that doesn't exist. He still is going to infuse as much realism as he possibly can. So yeah, I mean, I think it made sense that we saw some of these infected running around with no clothes on. Their clothes would have degraded and been gone by now after all these years. But yes, a lot of people were noticing Samson's Samson, as you will. Samson's Samson. But no, I think one thing I'm glad the Alpha didn't get killed off in the first film. I'm very much looking forward to seeing, because I have to imagine the Alpha is going to be in the second film too. They filmed both of these movies back to back, so we know the second film's already done. So I imagine he'll probably show up again. I don't think we've seen the last of the Alpha. I think we're going to see the Alpha again in the second film, but we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't survive in the UK without any clothes. Maybe not. I mean, and well, that's another aspect, is how do they survive during winter? I guess would be a very valid question to ask. I mean, if they do have no clothes, I mean, that's one thing for during the summer. Yeah, you're going to be fine. But when winter comes around, you're going to get very cold. But seeing as the way Alex Garland describes it, as these infected have really kind of evolved and morphed into animals and into what it would reflect in the animal kingdom. So I think they must have just found ways of surviving, found ways of staying warm in the winter, found ways of staying cool in the summer, found ways of dealing with the harsh environments that they would ultimately adapt to after a long period of time. But I suppose it is a very valid question to ask, how do they survive the winter if they don't have any clothes? That is a very valid question, if nothing else. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they very much evolved into, animals at this point, and have survived as such, I guess you could say. But yeah, there's good old Samson. Samson will most likely be in the second film. Now, one thing I did wonder, and you and I talked about this after seeing the film, and I saw somebody asking it in the chat a little while ago as well. How the hell are they going to introduce Jim into this movie, into this story? And that's a very interesting question that I'm very much wondering myself. We have heard confirmation that Cillian Murphy will be back in the second and in the third film. So he is coming back. He is going to, they are going to bring him back into the story. So now the question is, how exactly do they bring Jim into this story, narrative wise? Again, I have to imagine Alex Garland and Danny Boyle aren't going to do something that's just full on fan service where Jim just fucking shows up miraculously out of nowhere just to have that fan service. I have to imagine they have a plan, a real plan as to why Jim is showing up 28 years later, now at this point in time of anywhere else. Why is Jim back? So I really, and again, part of me does worry. I mean, is it just fan service? Again, if this wasn't Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, I'd be a little bit more worried that it would just be fan service. But knowing Alex Garland and knowing that he has been thinking about a sequel for this for many, many years, I have to at least hope or imagine that he's come up with a logical explanation, a reason that makes sense to reintroduce Jim into the narrative. Because I really do. I hope it's not just fan service. I mean, that is a very valid concern, absolutely. But again, I'm hoping that they found out a more kind of a way that makes sense, that why is Jim back? I was hoping at some point in this film to see some kind of setup scene that could maybe kind of open a doorway as to why Jim shows up in the second film. And again, there's always the NATO military aspect, and it looks like Jim did get rescued at the end of the first film, most likely by the military based on the fighter jet that flew over him and the helicopter that they sent to pick him up. So it seems like Jim did get rescued by the military. Could Jim potentially be a part of NATO? Could that be how they kind of rope him into the narrative? Or is there something else that they have planned? Again, I'm just hoping it makes sense. They need to come up with a way that makes sense for bringing Jim back into this story all these years later. Because again, this isn't just a few weeks later. This is 28 years after the events of 28 Days Later. So at this point, yeah, I guess that's my only tiny concern. What is going to be the narrative purpose for bringing Jim back, and is it going to make sense?
Well, I mean, I think about how they have described his return. They have described it as he will dominate and he will be crucial. So
He's
now
going to
that
be a
we know
big
that,
part. Yeah.
exactly, crucial, right? Now that we know that Spike is, our main character, and that it's his hero's journey, and we see him that he's about to go and be pals with this horrible Jimmy person, it makes sense that Jimmy will take some sort of role in saving Spike or
Opposite
assisting
of Jimmy.
Spike,
Jim versus
opposite of
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Yes, and
Jim
you brought
versus
that up
Jimmy.
first. You were the first one at least you were the first one I saw mentioning the possibility of a Jim versus Jimmy thing in the second film. I think that could be an interesting angle, but they have to bring him in logically. But that could be an interesting angle
Mhm.
overall as to why he's back.
And it's true to his character. We know Jim to be a savior. Jim could look away, but he doesn't. He rescues and saves and protects. That's how we know him. That is very much his nature. So it would make sense for him to come opposite of this evil Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't care if he knows you, for 2 minutes or 2 hours. He has it in himself to want to protect and take care of. And when he could run, he doesn't. He comes back, he saves, he protects. So it makes sense that if Spike needs help, it's probably going to be Jimmy who comes to the rescue. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I could see that being a possibility. I could see that being a possibility. Yeah, they need to just come up with a convincing reason, as Horror Council brings up, just a convincing reason as to why he's still in the UK. Because you would expect a character like that to get rescued and to go off to greener pastures. Again, this infection is only happening here in the UK. The rest of the world is completely fine, living a regular, everyday life. Which is a very interesting contrast that we see between Edmund Riding's character here and Spike. When you see the clashing of these two worlds, you see the clashing of these two cultures, really, and how one is completely foreign to the other. You see kind of Eric, the NATO soldier, the Swedish soldier, talking about things like the internet and stuff like this that Spike has just no reference for. I bet you have no idea what a delivery driver is. I bet you have no idea what the internet is. And then you're seeing Spike, who's lived his entire life inside this world where he has no idea what a smartphone is. He sees a smartphone and has no idea what it is. So it's interesting to see those kind of clashing of cultures here where these two characters are from very different worlds. So I did like that aspect of it, but yeah, you wonder how are they going to rope Jim into that? After Jim gets rescued at the end of the first film, you would think that maybe he would have gone back to civilization, that he would have gone back to the real world and lived a normal life, lived happily ever after with Selena, maybe had a few kids, and that's it. But if they're bringing him back, they're bringing him back for a reason, for a very specific reason. And Danny Boyle seems like he's got pretty specific plans for bringing Killian back. So I guess that's going to be interesting to see. How are they going to bring Jim back, and in what context is he just going to show up in the narrative? It needs to make sense. Definitely needs to make some sense. But who knows? Who knows? I guess we shall see. We shall see. Will it be one of those things where it's just fan service, where they just bring him back with a very bad explanation? I really hope not. I like to think Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are a little smarter than that, than to just bring him back for fan service. I have to feel they have a reason that's going to make sense for bringing him back. But who knows? Who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But what do you guys think? How is Jim going to be brought back? Are there any plausible reasons that you guys think Jim could show up in the second film? What would be a reason that would make sense to some of you guys in the chat? What would you like to see, I guess? Because, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but, there's only a few ways where it would probably make really good sense. But I like the aspect that maybe he could be set up to be this kind of opposite character to Jimmy. That's a very interesting idea. Who knows? Who knows? I guess we'll see. I guess we shall see. What if Jim was one of the ones returning Londoners at the beginning of Weeks? He escaped the firebombing and ran from London. That could be an interesting aspect. I mean, I suppose if Jim and Selena and Hannah got rescued at the end of 28 days later, and then when we get to 28 weeks later, yes, we get to the point where they're starting to ferry and they're starting to bring people back into the UK, into London, because they think that they have cleaned it up from the infection. Then, of course, we get the whole mess with the carriers and Dawn, and boom, we're back at square one and it's spread all over again. If that was the case, we could potentially see a very interesting backstory for Jim where he's living through not one, but literally two different apocalyptic events. He survives all of the events of 28 days later, only to get brought back home, only to have to go through it all over again in 20 while the events of 28 weeks later are going on. And maybe we could see a flashback of sorts in the second film that could showcase how Jim is brought back in, why Jim is in the UK now, and how, yeah, as you mentioned, the horror counselor, maybe he was one of those Londoners that got brought back during weeks, and we just didn't have a chance to see his storyline until now. That could make sense. So maybe that could be a route that they could explore. And again, it would add a very interesting aspect for Jim having to go through this apocalyptic event not once but twice. That's nuts for someone to have to go through this twice and then to have to survive for 28 years potentially on your own out here in this world.
I mean, that makes sense. And also, when people talk about maybe Jim, why would he want to come back? Why would he get involved? I just don't think that he's the type of person that can go through everything that he went through and go and live a normal life.
True.
It's just not in his nature because he could have, right? When he was away from the soldiers, he could have just gone and tried to look for a semblance of a life away. He had, escaped the soldiers, but he's not, it doesn't seem like he would be somebody that could put that away and not worry about what's actually happening. Even
Yeah.
if everybody told him, Don't worry about it, they're
Go live your
quarantined
life.
and everything is
Yeah.
okay, he
Yeah.
probably couldn't. He
Hmm.
probably, having experienced that himself, could not let other people suffer, and would want to know the truth. I do
Hmm.
see a really interesting question in the chat for you, Jeremy. And this is a question that a lot of people didn't understand. So there's a question in the chat regarding why they didn't take out Samson when he was
Yes.
under.
Yep. I think it was just it's just not, and Chewy kind of sums it up pretty simply, and is kind of my understanding as well. That's just not who Dr. Kelson is. That is not in his nature. It is not in his nature to take life. I think Dr. Kelson views the infected as just sick people. I mean, and I think that's the difference in the contrast between some of these characters' viewpoints that we see. We look at Jamie at the beginning of the film, and he sees the infected as soulless, as mindless. They have no soul because their mind has been taken over. So he has no problem with killing as many of them as he possibly needs to. And then I think you see Dr. Kelson, who has, in my opinion, a much different view on what the infected are, on who they are as a people. And yes, I just don't think that's in Dr. Kelson's nature. Dr. Kelson easily could have killed Samson in that moment, easily could have killed him, but he doesn't. He lets him live. And I think that's because Dr. Kelson has this kind of deeper appreciation for life, be it right or wrong. I mean, that's really up to you. But I think that's where Dr. Kelson comes from, where it's just not in his nature to kill this creature that he has just stunned and just rendered defenseless. I think he views the infected as more of sick people. He is a doctor, after all. This is a doctor.
Mm.
And doctors are, more than regular people, are kind of taught to respect the sanctity of life. So I think maybe that's just the only reason, where maybe he views these infected not as monsters, but as sick individuals, maybe. And maybe that's why he chooses to render them unconscious as opposed to killing them.
Yeah, exactly, right. I think that he has, Dr. Kelson showed us that he is not just a doctor, but a very good doctor who has a beautiful bedside manner of being
Yeah.
able to walk people through very difficult things, right, through the seas. And it makes sense that he just sees them as human, right? He
The
has
people.
that line where he says there was infected and non-infected alike
Yeah.
because they are alike. And let's not forget, he named him. We know his name because Dr.
He
Kelson
gave
named
him a
him.
name. You know?
He gave him a name, so giving
Mhm.
him some dignity. So Dr. Kelson was not going to take him out. That was not ever something that was his goal. And so then you ask the second question, why didn't Spike and the mother, why didn't they take him out knowing that he's after them for this baby? Spike was not going to take him out either because he needs the assistance of Dr. Kelson. So he's not
Yeah.
about to do something that the doctor wouldn't agree with because he needs him to um, take a look into what's going on with his mother, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
He wouldn't upset
maybe.
him. Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want to upset Dr. Kelson. Maybe they just didn't want to. I mean, Spike did try to kill the thing. I mean, he put fucking tons of arrows into the dude, and the dude just kept coming. Yeah, at that point, I think they were just more concerned with retreating and getting out of there as opposed to killing this thing. But I get it. I mean, I can see it from Dr. Kelson's perspective. Again, I definitely seems like he doesn't seem to view these things as monsters. It seems like he views them as sick individuals. Otherwise, why walk around carrying a morphine mixture that renders them inert in under a few seconds if you didn't value their life? Why not just kill them like Jamie does? Because they view them in a different way. But I think that's the explanation why we don't see Dr. Kelson kill Samson, why he just renders him kind of stunned. But yeah, who knows? Again, and I think Dr. Kelson was one of the more interesting characters. I think, Ray Fiennes being one of the most phenomenal actors to ever do it. He's capable of such a wide range of characters that he can play, whether it's Voldemort or all of the classic kind of Shakespearean characters that he's played over the years, or something like this, Dr. Kelson. The guy's just so capable. He's so capable of slipping into any role that they put him in. And I love how he is the mentor within Spike's hero's journey in this first film. I think it makes perfect sense. I think it's set up very well where he is coming to this doctor in hopes of gaining help to save his mother. But really, this doctor is giving him all the tools that he needs to complete his journey into adulthood and to complete his hero's journey. Because again, this trilogy is ultimately Spike's trilogy. It's not Jamie's trilogy. It's not Jim's trilogy. This is Spike's story. So when you look at it in that kind of context, I think Dr. Kelson is just perfectly suited to play that mentor role within the first act of the hero's journey. And that's what he did. That's exactly what he did. His purpose in the story was to give Spike knowledge and the tools that he needed to complete his quest. And in this case, that was giving him the knowledge and the tools to accept death, to accept that there are some things you just can't change, to accept that some things are just inevitable, but that doesn't mean that you don't live life and appreciate the sanctity of life while you have it, because death eventually does come for everybody. That is the whole purpose of Memento Mori. And Memento Moris, don't forget to love. Don't forget that you must love as well as you must die. And I think that is where Dr. Kelson is. That is the role that he's playing in this film. He is giving Spike the tools that he needs and the knowledge that he needs to grow up and to ultimately accept the death of his mother, essentially. And I think in that context, he played his role to perfection. I was a little bit worried about him at the end when the Alpha catches back up with them, and we see the Alpha kind of fucking just almost rip Kelson right out from underground. But luckily, Spike was super quick in knocking out the Alpha once again. So yeah, I think we're going to see an interesting Dr. Kelson in the second film, with the second film being titled The Bone Temple. I'm hoping they'll go a little bit more into the actual Bone Temple. I feel like they gave us a little bit on it, but not a whole lot. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the second film. I think we'll probably see some other flashbacks to Kelson when he was younger. And I like how they had a little bit of a tie-in where Spike's grandfather, where Dr. Kelson was literally Spike's grandfather's doctor 30 years ago before the world fell to shit. Dr. Kelson was a doctor in the area, and he treated probably a lot of these people. And I think that's why a lot of them know of him and know that he's out there on his own and that he's a little bit strange. But it was nice how they put that kind of connection there, that Spike's grandfather was once a patient of Dr. Kelson before the virus ever broke out. So they kind of explain a little bit of his backstory as well, but I think we'll get a lot more of it in the Bone Temple. Yeah, Dr. Kelson's a mad genius. I mean, you got to be some kind of mad genius to figure out that iodine, however you like to pronounce it, is something that the infection doesn't like. Like, how the fuck did he discover that iodine works against the infected? I don't know how he figured that out, but definitely some mad genius going on there.
Mm-hmm. And I love, half of the fun of theorizing about the film is seeing if you're right or wrong. And
Absolutely.
I feel like Dr. Kelson is a huge moment of celebration for this channel, because a lot of people immediately said Dr. Kelson is not a good guy. he is
Yeah.
bad. I mean, it's so obvious. He has like all of these skulls around. He's covered in what appears to be blood. But this channel, this is our celebration moment. You were right. He was, in fact, literally the hermit all by
He was the
himself,
mentor.
the mentor showing Spike how to handle one of the most difficult moments of his life, and Isla walking Isla through the process of dying, right? Assisting her and this death, right? Um,
And doing such a
so
well job that the whole time
yeah,
Isla feels like she's with her father. She feels so safe and so protected that she feels like the whole time she feels like Spike is her father. That's how good a job Spike is doing to keep her safe and to
mm,
console her, that she feels that she's with her dad.
exactly right. She calls him father, and what a beautiful metaphor for the way that she feels that she is being taken care of by Spike. And also, it's beautiful in a way and yet tragic because he is her child. He should not have this role. He should not have to be going through this, right? Which is
Mhm.
why we believe that Isla made the decision to go on her own terms instead of waiting out the time that the cancer would take her. She
Yeah.
decided that that night would be the last night that she would
And
be
his
alive.
suffering. Yes, to not prolong it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. So that's a huge moment of celebration for the channel because your video on Dr. Kelson was in fact correct. He was not a dark character. He was a helpful mentor character. He was kind. And in fact, the structure was as a monument to death and love. Death
Yeah.
and love.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, he was. I mean, and I had. Yeah, he's the quintessential mentor within the hero's journey, and he played his part to a T in that regard, to kind of to give Spike the knowledge and give him the tools that he needs to accept his mother's death. Something that Spike did not want to face the entire film. Again, he's doing all of this with the feeling that he's going to be able to save his mother. So to go from that feeling to all of a sudden having to confront that you can't save her and she is going to die, that's a just completely rocking Spike's world. It's why he doesn't go back to the community. It's why he doesn't go back to his father, because he can't. He feels like he can't go back there now, that his story is taking him somewhere else. And I think he's right in that regard. But yeah, it was. I mean, when you look at it in that context, I think it was a beautiful ending for Spike's mother, the way that she kind of sacrifices herself and allows Dr. Kelson to kind of take her out in that moment to not prolong Spike's kind of pain. Because she knew that whether she dies now or a few months from now, all that's going to be is prolonged suffering for her son, Spike. So in those more lucid moments of hers, she's willing to sacrifice herself. She's willing to put an end to it now for his sake. And that is the ultimate sacrifice that parents make for their children. And it was finally a reversal of roles yet again, where at the beginning of the film, we have one role reversal where it's not the parent taking care of the kid, it's the kid taking care of the parent. Then we finally get to the end of the film and we see nature's kind of natural order reestablished, where the mother is now taking care of Spike by sacrificing herself to
Mhm.
end his suffering. So we get a good role reversal, not once, but twice by the time the film is done, with Caretaker and who is being taken care of. And I think that was a good kind of contrast between those two kind of dichotomies of Caretaker and child, which Spike was both in this film, Caretaker and child. But no, it was good. I thought that was good. I thought that was a good sequence. I thought it made sense. I thought it made sense for Dr. Kelson's character to help Spike through that at the end and ease this kind of pain that he's going to be feeling, and to kind of get him to kind of confront it, to realize that death is just a natural part of life and it's something we all have to deal with at some point or another. And I think these are the aspects that threw some people off, where they were maybe just expecting like a zombie movie. But this was never going to be that. This was never going to be just a zombie movie. It was always going to be a little bit more than that. It was always going to be more of a human movie, showcasing the best and worst of humanity and what we're capable when society falls and when there is no more rule of law. What kind of human rises to the surface? evil or good. And that's very much how the first 28 Days Later film is. The first 28 Days Later is not just a zombie film. It is very much a film of Jim going on this journey of what it means to be human, of spending this entire film doing everything he can to avoid the infection, to avoid getting the rage within him, only to end up tapping into that natural human rage by the end of the film anyway, while he's still human, only to pull himself back from the brink and not get completely consumed by it like the rage virus victims do. These movies have never just been zombie films. They've always been about the human condition, ultimately. And that's what 28 Years Later was. And I think maybe some people were expecting a little bit different, something a little bit different. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to be a film that everybody loves. And that's totally, totally fine. That is why we have so many of them to look forward to these days. But no, in that context, I feel like they set out what they accomplished. They accomplished what they set out to do in terms of telling a more human tale and not just a kind of surface level thrills and chills kind of thing.
They have never told a zombie story, okay? And this is the
It's
thing.
never been just a zombie story. No.
It's never been their style. So if you are looking at a movie that they made and you expect a movie that shows you 201 ways to kill a zombie, which a lot of zombie movies are, all they are is you running away from the zombies and seeing people killing them in different ways. I mean, for me, it gets boring after a while. We have zombie fatigue. We have seen so many shows that are zombies, The Walking Dead, The Last of Us. And it's like at this point, we have seen just about every which way to kill a zombie or way to interpret a zombie or to be afraid and run away from a zombie. And this was never their style. Their style from the very beginning was about people and humanity. While the virus was there, it wasn't about look at these terrifying, scary zombies. It was even in the apocalypse, what you should fear the most is people. The uninfected can be way more terrifying than the infected. You will be praying to be surrounded by the infected once you get to know what people have actually planned for you.
Yeah.
That has always been their style. So I think it depends. If somebody watched the trailer, they don't know anything about them, they didn't get the first movie, and they wanted to see just 2 hours of um, creative ways to kill a zombie, then yeah, you're going to be disappointed because it was never that. And they
Yeah.
went on interviews and told you this is about family. So
This is
I
about
don't know how
humans.
much more clear they could have made it.
Yeah, this was always going to be a story about people and about family and about it really is Spike's coming of age tale, and that is a family tale that gets told. It's this very delicate relationship that he has between a very delicate relationship between mother and son in general, especially when you kind of reverse that role and you see what happens when the child becomes the caretaker to the parent and what that does. Um, but yeah, I think it was in that instance. Oh, let me reload this. In that instance, I feel like they set out what they accomplished to do. Again, these have never just been zombie films. Yes, it's set in a post-apocalyptic zombie quote unquote infected ridden world landscape, so there's always going to be those aspects. There's always going to be the gore, the intensity, the chase scenes and all of that. But these films have always been more than just zombie films. Whether you look at 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, or this, they've always been more than just zombie films. They've always shown kind of the darker aspects of the human condition and what humans are capable of when put in these extreme circumstances. Do you rise to the occasion, or do you succumb to your kind of inner darkness kind of thing? That is what these films have always been. And in that context, I think it fits well within the trilogy, within the franchise of 28 Days, Weeks, and now Years Later. But no, it's going to be interesting to see where the second one goes. I think they've left a lot of interesting kind of roads for them to take in this second film. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of questions still going on. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions in terms of Jim. How is Jim going to show up? Is it going to make sense? And again, I have those questions too. I'm very much wondering, how are you going to bring Cillian Murphy back into the story? How are you going to set him up where he enters this narrative and it makes sense? But again, I think if anyone can pull that off, it's Alex Garland's writing. But we'll see. We'll see. I think the second film is going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think the second film is going to determine a lot of where this franchise goes. And in terms of like how good it's going to do, we do already have an idea of what it's doing in the box office. And because I think I saw a few people wondering whether or not it could be a flop. No chance. There's no chance this film is ever going to be a flop. When you look at the numbers that it's already bringing in, it's already set to make around 35 million domestic just in its opening weekend. That's just here in the States. 35 million opening weekend just here in the States it's projected to make right now. It's already brought in almost 20 million already. And then you look at the sales abroad, the UK and all of the other parts of the world. This movie only had a budget of $75 million. That is incredibly cheap. It's just such an inexpensive film to make nowadays compared to other Hollywood budgets. So when you look at a $35 million projected opening just here domestically, yeah, no, this definitely there's no chance the film is going to be a flop. It's definitely already doing well in the box office. If you probably add up the total sales between domestic and abroad, I imagine it probably already well broke even and already well brought in 75 million. So no, this film is going to have a pretty big profit margin. This is not going to be a flop by any means. And I think, again, they're very lucky in the sense where this film only cost 75 million to make. That is incredibly cheap. 75 million is pennies compared to what studios shell out for films these days. Some films kind of end up dwarfing $200 or even $300 million just in filming. And that's before marketing. You have to spend a ton, almost like a third of that you end up spending on marketing after the film is done promoting it. So with a $75 million budget, I imagine they're probably going to have to make around 150 million total back in order to be in the plus. And they're going to crush that. They're going to absolutely crush that just here domestically, let alone abroad. Because if they're already projected to do around 35 million opening weekend, then yeah, this film is definitely on par to be a hit. Definitely not a flop by any means. Which means it's probably that much more likely that we will get the third film. We definitely will.
Mhm.
I mean, the second one's already done filmed. We're supposed to get the Bone Temple around, right now it's scheduled for January 16th, which is only 7 months from now. That's a super quick turnaround in terms of a trilogy getting put out, where you're getting one film now and you're getting the second one only 7 months later. So right now, the Bone Temple is set to hit theaters on January 16th. But I imagine over the next few weeks or so, we'll probably get an announcement that they're going ahead and they're starting filming on the third film, because there's no way the studio's not going to greenlight it after seeing these numbers just within the first weekend. So yeah, they're doing good. They're doing really good.
Yeah.
They are doing
I loved the film, and I think a lot of the American audience did like the film. What I'm seeing is that, unfortunately, right, for the Americans, they seem to be very confused. And we seem to be forgetting this is a British film. This is not an American film. So if you're lost, this is not about you. This time it's about the British. This is their style. It is their film. It's always been a British film. So some things that
Mhm.
we might not be getting, and the style choices that we might not be understanding, they very much understand. When I see British people critiquing the film, they find it to be something that they get. We can connect to anything, right?
Yeah.
About the
And
ending, but when they critique the ending, they say, "Oh, that's so much, like British style. Like that
it
is
is, it's a
our
British
pop
movie.
culture."
Yes.
So
I,
I think, unfortunately, and I hate this, I don't want to, because as Americans, we get such a bad reputation about wanting everything to connect to us. Everything should be
yeah.
about our pop culture. This was never an American film. This was British. And
Yeah.
if you don't get it, then like take a look, do some research as to their pop culture.
Look at it through that
This
lens.
would be
Yeah.
the Jimmy Savile thing. Okay. They're like, I don't get it. It's weird. What a weird choice. Like it took me out of the film. Okay, imagine, if you will, if it was an American film, that Spike, a 12-year-old boy, comes across somebody, an adult, that is dressed like P. Diddy or one of these people that we revered, Bill Cosby.
Very
And
much.
you
Yeah.
would notice the style. You would be like, oh my God, he's dressed like P. Diddy or Bill Cosby. And you would immediately feel that sinking feeling in your stomach that this 12-year-old boy is coming across somebody that resembles a figure that is full of darkness, because you know what they did. That is
Mhm.
what the British felt when they saw immediately. A lot of people connected to that reference, and they
I-
got that sinking feeling in their stomach of this
mhm.
12-year-old boy encountering a character like this.
Yeah, and I think that's why they threw some of the more very British aspects of the film in there, whether it's the very specific style box train cars that Danny Boyle loves using that are very period correct, or whether it's the Angel of the North. And even I didn't recognize what the Angel of the North was when the trailers first came out, the very famous kind of statue in England, which I've come to learn since then. It makes a lot more sense when you look at this through a British pop culture lens. You're 100% right about that, because it is. It's a British film. This is not an American film. This is a British film, and I think when you look through it that lens, some of these more stylistic choices will probably make a little more sense, I would imagine. But that's just how it is. That is just how it is. But no, I know, and there's also a lot of debate in the chat as to whether or not it was Jimmy Savile inspired at the end or just Power Rangers, and I think that's an interesting kind of back and forth to have. And I think until we actually learn more from like Danny Boyle or Alex Garland themselves, it's really hard to know definitively one way or the other. But again, totally understand people pointing out the Jimmy Savile kind of aspects, because they're very prevalent. You look at them and you can totally understand why people see that. But I also understand the Power Ranger aspect as well, where people look at it and they see a lot of Power Ranger infusion as well. And it could be one, it could be other, it could be both. Who knows? I guess that's really
Mhm.
up to Danny Boyle to tell us, to decide like what was the real inspiration behind this look of this character. And I'm sure he will. I mean, Danny Boyle, once films come out, he loves talking about them. That's one thing that I love about Danny Boyle. He always loves talking about his films. He loves explaining his films. So now that it is out, I have to imagine we will get that definitive answer at some point, whether or not this was Jimmy Savile inspired, or whether it's just, again, this was the 90s. This was Britain. Tracksuits were super fucking popular back then. So was big jewelry and the blonde hair. Again, it is very Savile like, but I guess we'll see. I guess we shall see. And why, if it is Seville inspired, that would be why it's in the film. Because for them, pop culture froze at the 90s. So everybody that is inside the UK, they have no reference, they have no idea what was uncovered about Jimmy Savile later on in life. They just don't know. They just don't know that he was actually a monster and not
Mhm.
this kind of friendly figure that he portrayed himself to be. They just don't know that. So if they are modeling their look after him, it's because they don't know he's a monster. And yeah, it could just be a combination. It could be a mix of both at the end of the day. It could be a little bit of that, a little bit of that, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I imagine Danny Boyle will end up answering that eventually. I'm sure we'll get a definitive answer at some point.
Yeah, I would agree with Lynx. I think it's a combination of what the children were watching, because you get the Teletubbies
Get the
soundtrack.
Teletubbies vibe,
So
and even the sound. Yeah, the song.
it's
Mhm.
a mashup of what was popular in their pop culture. And I would say about the Jimmy Savile, um, I think that it does have something to do with it. It is definitely maybe not 100% model after him, but it is an influence. To get a wig right, we have to think about what they had to go through to conjure up this look, right? To get
Yeah,
a blonde wig, you could get any blonde wig, right? But to get a very specific cut in the wig that just happens to match perfectly to what that person's hair was like, it could
and
have
it
been a
might have
straight
nothing
wig.
to do with it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it could have been, right?
yes.
So there's so many variables, so many factors. I'm sure that we will find out. Um, but
Yeah.
it definitely conjures up what I have seen, the reviews that I have seen from people who were around during that pop culture time and around for the aftermath. What conjures up in them is just this sinking feeling, because they know how dark that time was, of having to come to terms with who he really was. So if they wanted to conjure up a feeling in the viewer, they definitely did. He
Hmm.
was a monster.
Yeah, yeah. If they were trying to invoke that kind of feeling, then yeah, they definitely achieved it. But yeah, no, I think again, I think all these answers will come in time. Again, Danny Boyle loves talking about his films once they've actually premiered. And now that he's probably going to be not too minding of talking about spoilers, we'll eventually get a definitive answer as to what was the real inspiration behind the look at the end of the film. We'll get the definitive answer at some point. But until then, yeah, I mean, it's totally fine to speculate whether you come from one camp or the other. That's totally fine. That is what it's all about, kind of analyzing these things and coming to your own conclusion. But yeah, that is what it is all about, guys. What do you think? What is the inspiration? And again, everybody is always, people are always going to come to different conclusions about these kinds of things.
Mhm.
We shall see. We shall see. But overall, I liked the film. I thought it was a good film. There were certain aspects about it that I thought could have been done a little bit better. Yes, but overall, for what Danny Boyle and Alex Garland set out to try and achieve, which I do think I get what they were trying to achieve, which again was always going to be more than just a zombie film. In that instance, I feel that it was a good first start. It was a good first setup to this next trilogy in introducing these new characters, getting a look at what the world looks like after 28 years of being ravaged with the infected, seeing what the infection looks like now and how it has mutated in multiple different forms. Overall, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was a good film. Was it a great, great, great film for me? No, but it was a really good film for me. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I think it was great. It was great. And somebody said it in the chat previously. They said sometimes there's movies that come out and they're really great, but it's not until years after
That
that
they're
people go back
appreciated.
and watch it and they are appreciated in its depth, really. And for me, I think it was amazing. It was worth waiting for 28 years. I think that the film grew up with a lot of us. A lot of us were the Teletubby kids and now we are adults, and so
Mhm.
we have adult problems, just like we're saying, depicted in the film. There's families and sicknesses and issues, real life problems. So for me it was great. I love it. I'm gonna stand by it. I appreciate the people that didn't like it. They just have a
Yeah,
different point of view.
totally
And it
fine.
makes me wonder, like, what did they like? Like, what is their favorite movie?
Mhm.
It makes me interested always to see other people's point of view. Because if this is my type of movie, then what is their type of movie? Very interesting, I find it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always what's fun about these discussions. Seeing what people like, seeing what people don't like, and that is always going to be the nature of filmmaking. There's always going to be people that love something. There's always going to be people that hate it, and then you're going to find people that are kind of in the middle, where they like some parts of it and didn't like other aspects of it. Totally fine. That is what filmmaking is for. That is what the cinema experience is for. If everybody thought the same, it would be a damn boring world, and these discussions would never be fucking fun if that was the case. So it's totally fine if people are on different sides of this one. Totally fine. Some films are a little bit more divisive, and this one definitely is. I guess it all depends on what you were going into the film hoping it was going to be. That is always going to determine how you receive it. And everybody's going into this film probably looking for something different. Some people are looking for one thing, other people are looking for something else, and that's totally fine. That is totally fine. And don't let anybody tell you there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. Definitely had some problems, but overall, I very much think it's a good start to the trilogy. I'm very excited for the Bone Temple now, and I think in that instance, it very much did its job. Where I am very excited to see where the
Mhm.
story goes from here. I want to see where Spike's story goes. I want to learn a lot more about Jack O'Connell's character. Where has he been for the last 28 years? How has he been molded into this character that we see at the end of the film? How is Killian Murphy's Jim going to get brought into the narrative? So, in terms of the hype for the Bone Temple, yeah, I'm super hyped for Bone Temple. Absolutely. Bring it on. January cannot come fast enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anything, with the ending being so strange, whether you liked it or not, you want to
Yeah.
see what it's about. Even if you found it ridiculous, you're like, where were they going with this, right? Even if
Yeah.
it's gonna be just to watch and see what the point of it was, you're gonna want to see it.
Yeah, I think it definitely left a very intriguing aspect where, I mean, I imagine a lot, maybe not everybody, and that's totally fine, but I imagine the majority of people who watch this first film are definitely going to want to see the Bone Temple when it comes out, just to see where this freaking thing's going to go next, whether it's for that ending was super crazy and I didn't get it, and I don't know what the hell they were trying to fucking pull off there, or whether you look at the ending and you can kind of see the pop culture references and understand, okay, I kind of get what they were going for there. But either way, I think a lot of people are going to want to see the Bone Temple. But overall, I enjoyed it. Thought it was a good film. If I was going to give it a score out of 10, I would probably give it a solid, like a 7.5 out of 10 for me personally. 7.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good start to the trilogy. What about you? Would you give it a score out of 10? And chat, let us know what you guys thought as well. 1 out of 10. 1 being horrible, 10 being great. What did you guys think out of a score from 1 to 10? I'm at like a 7.5.
7.5. Okay. I give it a 10.
Nice.
And to me, it's going to be one of my favorite films of all time. One that I'm going to recommend everybody see, because of the philosophy of life. Because it's not just about zombies, it's about so much more. It has so many layers. It invokes so much emotion, but real life emotion. It's connected to something that is actually going to happen to all of us. All of us will die. And so I enjoyed that part of it. I'm going to give it a 10. But I love that it's not as simple as everybody agreeing that it's a 10.
Yes.
Some people just don't like it. And
it's
I
certainly
love
creating
that.
a discussion. That's for sure.
I love that because if you like it, you love it. And if you don't like it, you hate it. And that I can appreciate.
Me too. Again, it's always fun to see that the scores vary, especially in our chat. We usually get a pretty good group of people that show up here that usually like diving into these things like on a more serious manner and aren't just kind of throwing stuff around. And it's always interesting to see the scores of people, what they liked, what they didn't like, and where they thought it could have been better. And yeah, just to see the overall scores. Seems like most people really enjoyed it. We got a few sixes, a few fives, which is to be expected. Again, you're going to see a film like this be widely kind of all over the spectrum in terms of its scores. But yeah, for me, 7.5 out of 10. Definitely enjoyed it. Looking forward to the Bone Temple. Definitely thought there could have been some things that were done a little bit better. But overall, it was very much a cinematic experience. Like, this was cinematically, it was beautiful. Seeing some of these shots in this film in particular were so good. Like, this is probably my favorite shot. Where was it? It was so good. I mean, this shot was just so good. This shot right here, this is probably my favorite shot of the entire film. This has probably one of the best collections of just widescreen landscape shots that we've seen in a film in a very long time. I love this shot. This is something that I could see coming right out of like A Song of Ice and Fire, where the only difference is this would be a weirwood tree in the middle instead of a regular tree. So cinematically wise, looking at some of the kind of the cinematic experience, that it very much hit it out of the park. Just for me personally, I thought there was some beautiful shots in this film, absolutely beautiful landscape shots. This one in particular was probably my favorite. But then again, even the causeway at night and seeing the Aurora Borealis in the background, the Northern Lights and all of the, the Milky Way, and just seeing all the colors, it was very cinematically pleasing to the eye in many cases, at least for me anyway. So I very much enjoyed the cinematography of the film. Really good. Really good. But yeah, awesome scores, guys. Awesome scores. It definitely seems like, most of us enjoyed it, but some people didn't. And that is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think tonally it plays off exactly what the first and second film did. Again, when you look at the first and second film a little closer, these are not just zombie films. They never have been just zombie films. These have always been films that showcase the more complex kind of aspects of the human condition and what humans are capable of when pushed to the ultimate brink, for good or for bad. That is what these films have always been about. That is the story Jim goes on in the first film. That is the story Jeremy Renner's character goes in the second film, and Rose Byrne's character as well. When you're faced with that choice, do you ultimately kind of is the good going to come out of you or is the evil going to come out of you? I think Jeremy Renner kind of encapsulates this perfectly in the second film more than maybe any other character when he gets the orders from NATO to just start killing everybody, infected and human alike. And he says, no, fuck that. I'm not just going to kill all these people. I'm going to get these people out of here. It showcases the best and the worst of what humans are capable of in extreme situations like this. And that is what these films have always been about. They've never just been zombie films. So when you look at it in that light, I think it very much tonally fits the other two films, just for me personally. But no, it's good. It's good to see that, you know, there's a wide variety of opinions and thoughts on the film. Again, if we all thought the same, these discussions would be boring as fuck. So no, it's good. It's totally fine that some people loved it, some people hated it, and then you have some people in the middle that liked some of it and didn't like other parts of it. Totally fine. But either way, very much looking forward to the Bone Temple. I am going to have my full, like, in-depth analysis breakdown up on the channel probably within the next day or two. I'm working on a full breakdown that really goes into kind of the tones and the themes and the symbology. There's a lot of symbolism in this film that I think people maybe don't recognize right on the surface. That you'll probably notice once you watch this film another second or even third time. And that was one thing that I found right off the beginning. There is a lot of symbolism in this film, whether it's dating back to Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. There's tons of symbolism in this film, and I'm going to go through and point out all of that symbolism and what I believe it means within the context of the film. Like, you look at the one scene where Jamie and Spike go into the house and they find the soldier that is hanging upside down with Jimmy carved in its chest. One thing a lot of people don't even talk about that we talked about right off the bat is the crow. The crow picking at that soldier's liver, very much enacting that Prometheus kind of feeling, where the liver is getting picked out of the body, only to grow back the next day, only to get picked out again. So there's a lot of symbolism and symbology in this film that I'm going to go through and kind of talk a little bit about. So that'll be in there as well. But I will have my full in-depth breakdown on the channel within the next few days. And I'm sure PM and I will definitely be doing some other streams talking about the film, and also at least some prediction streams in terms of what we are expecting for the Bone Temple. We'll probably have some streams on that too. So the discussion is not over yet. We are still going to be diving into this thing head first. And I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out and hanging out with us and giving us your thoughts and giving us your opinions and giving us your time. I very much appreciate that. And yeah, we will marinate on this one. And I definitely think this is going to be a film that people will find a deeper appreciation for the more time that goes by and the more viewings you have of it. I think people will find a deeper appreciation for it. If not, that's totally fine. Totally fine if not. But I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this fine evening or day, depending on which part of the world you are in. And thank you so much, PM, for joining me as always, my wonderful co-host. And yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Oh, for sure. And thank you so much, Chad. Your Chad, Jeremy, I say they always know all and they're always the best. We
Absolutely.
love all of the different opinions because it is really a respectful dialogue. The chat has difference of opinions, and we need the brave people that say, I don't like it, respectfully.
Absolutely.
We need
Yeah.
your voices so that you could tell us from your point of view what you're seeing, right? This is not a channel that is only going to cater to some.
Yeah.
All of us want to have fun together. So if
Absolutely.
you're listening to the live stream after, in the comments, we want to know more about why you didn't like it. If you happen to
Yeah. Tell
not
us your
like it, or
thoughts. Yeah.
if you do like it, why? Because I see a lot of like, I liked it, I didn't like it, it was the worst, it was the best.
But
Tell
no
us why.
reasoning. Yeah, give us the reasoning.
Yeah,
What didn't you like? What did you like? Yeah, we love hearing everybody's opinions, and we always check out the comment
yeah.
section. Absolutely.
I love reading the comments. So tell us why you didn't like it or why you did like it. And if you happen to not have liked it, give me an example of a movie that you did like, right?
Ooh, there you go.
So that
Good.
way I could see your point of view. I could see where you're coming from and what you think is a good movie.
Awesome.
But I've had so much fun with all of you. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. And thank you, Jeremy.
Oh, absolutely. A big thank you to each and every one of you. It's always a blast. Anytime we dive into something like super deep, whether it's a TV show, a film, this is what we love doing. We love diving into this stuff. We love talking about it. We love hearing from all of you as well, whether you love it or whether you hate it. That's totally fine. We just want to hear everybody's opinions. So yeah, as PM said, if you're watching this on the replay, leave your thoughts and your comments in the comment section below. Let us know what you liked about the film. Let us know what you didn't like about the film. And, let us know what you're looking forward to and what you're expecting to see in the Bone Temple as well. But yeah, overall, very much appreciate each and every one of you, and had an absolute blast today diving into this. And this is far from our last discussion. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of everything that's in this film. There's so many scenes that we didn't talk about yet. And that's why I'll be doing a much more in-depth breakdown, and I'll have that out on the channel, if not tomorrow, the next day, the latest. It's going to be a very extensive breakdown of the film and my review. But we'll also be doing other live streams on it as well. So definitely come back, give us your thoughts, go watch it for a second or even a third time, see if it changes some of your opinions on some things, or whether it doesn't. Totally fine. But either way, we are just starting the conversation on 28 years later, and we will be continuing it over the next few weeks. So big thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on this fine Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, depending on where you are in the world. And we will see each and every one of you on the next one.
There's no discharge in the war.
Doing this. You stop for nothing! Run! Send it.
Moving up and down again. Don't. Look at what's in front of you. If your minds are, they will get the top of you. Hey, keep from going north, moving up and down again.
There are many kinds of death, and some are better than others.
You scared? Are you? No.
Do you know the words memento mori?
It means remember death.
Mom?
Remember, you must die.
Jimmy, do you not live?
28 years ago, it began.
Infection takes away their mind.
We adapted.
Our home is so precious.
They evolved. On June 20th, a new fear is born.
Put it down. Kill it.
There are many kinds of death. Some are better than others.
He's yours.